So in previous videos, I've talked about battleships not being the best choice in ranked. And if you do want to play a battleship, I really think Missouri is your best option, even over something like the Musashi that we talked about last week. That ship's available in the auction, and it's 4 doubloons, and you better believe that's going to cost a ton of doubloons. Several $100s would be my prediction of the amount of doubloons. But I still don't think it's the best choice for ranked. I think Missouri is just way, way better because of this radar. The reason this destroyer is going to die here is because of my radar. We don't have a cruiser on our team to give us radar on this flank. The Riga's gone to the other side. So me, in a Missouri, I'm able to provide that radar support to this half of the map. And hopefully, we're going to get a nice finishing salvo on this tier 8 Italian destroyer, which is not a great ship, but I'm right there with this guy trying to play them in rank to figure them out a little bit. Unfortunately, we miss, but we hit 7 out of 9 of our first salvo, so it's tough to complain when we get that kind of RNG on our first salvo and then miss on the second one. But this ship, I really do believe, is the best option for ranked if you're trying to play a battleship. Battle impact is something that battleships are weak at. The ships are good at dealing damage at long ranges, getting extremely high damage numbers, mainly from hitting the enemy's battleships, which isn't really all that useful when the goal of ranked, of course, is completely about winning. That's all that matters here. We're just trying to get our star and move on and try and get to the next rank. And for that, we need to win the game, so we need to focus on the cap circles. And that is why I said destroyers are what you should be playing. And I still believe that. But if you do happen to have the Missouri, I think this is an excellent pick for ranked as well, simply because you're able to contest caps with this decently long range radar that lasts a reasonable amount of time. Of course, I don't think that I'm going to be able to solo kill an enemy destroyer with my Missouri. That's why I want to go with my teammates. Hopefully there's some other destroyers on my team around that are going to help us to finish out a destroyer early on in the game and give us an easy way into a victory. However, this game is far from over, and now I want to talk to you a little bit more about battleship positioning in ranked games. The goal here is to not throw your ship away early. You have a lot of HP, and tanking late game can be super beneficial for your team. Of course, you don't want to be sniping from the back necessarily, but notice how our Lion is already dead? Yeah, he pushed a little too aggressively into the C cap, and we're going to see something here that also is a bit of a misplay from our Pommern. Our Pommern is about to rush the A cap, which we already control and have killed the enemy destroyer on. All we need to do here is hold on to this flank. Sure, the enemy team could get a push into the C cap, but since they've lost their DD, they're going to have a really tough time of that because their Seattle is a relatively squishy ship that we should be able to deal without an issue, especially since there's a carrier spotting. We retain a destroyer advantage. Our Riga is pushed a little aggressive as well. So a bit of an issue here where the enemy team is in a position where they have to push or they're going to lose the game. We're going to gain complete cap control since our destroyer is just moving across through all the caps, capping them. And the enemy team would be forced to push. And yet my teammates are pushing in. So how do you deal with this where your team is kind of throwing the game for you? Well, the key is to use their aggression, but not over push with them. So I'm going to stop here just outside of the A cap. Our Pommern is going to get a decent angle on the enemy carrier. And if we can manage to help and support in taking him out, that's going to be a great thing for our team, even if we're going to lose our Riga and we're going to lose our Pommern. The other thing is if enemy battleships decide to push around the island that the Pommern is pushing to, hopefully we're going to catch them in a crossfire. Not guaranteed, but that is the hope here. All while we're not giving up the potential for carrying into the late game here. The Pommern, I think, spots him, or perhaps it was the carrier spotting. But I'm just sitting here waiting for the carrier. That's really all that matters right now. I see the Seattle spotted, but he's nowhere near the C cap, so we don't really have to deal with him. The Iowa decides to come push around, but I've already shot at the carrier. And it goes a little high. Unfortunate. But the Missouri, of course, is an excellent battleship for dealing with these carriers, since the AA is alright, certainly much better than a ship like the Musashi, and our accuracy is much better as well. So assuming we're able to catch a broadside or even an angled carrier, we're going to overmatch no problem and get some huge hits in. As you can see, our Pommern is in a bit of trouble here, and unfortunately I'm not quite able to help on this Iowa, but the Iowa is pushing out broadside to our Pommern, and that means that, well, he's taken a ton of damage, and the Pommern actually trades out the Iowa. Had the Iowa on the enemy team gone bow into our Pommern, you'll notice I would have had perfect broadsides on him. So either way, I do believe we would have traded this Pommern for the Iowa. At least that's what I would like to believe. He's going to go down though now as the enemy Musashi and the Soyuz actually push through. And you'll notice I'm starting to retreat instantly. This is what we need to do at this point, is catch this Musashi, catch this Soyuz broadside, if they're going to try and push our Riga, try and push our destroyer, who are in the B and C caps. Of course, we can reset them all day long in the A cap if they just want to sit there, but if they're going to push broadside, I'm going to open up the angle for that. And yeah, we catch the Musashi's cheek there. If you didn't know, Musashi, Yamato, all of them can be citadeled extremely easily at close range at around a 30-degree angle. All you have to do is aim just underneath their front turrets, and you'll get that cheek citadel like we just did. And of course, if the Musashi goes bow in, well, he's going to be opened up to broadsides from our Riga, who unfortunately goes down. And of course, we do have a destroyer on our team, which can do excellent damage into these battleships as well. Now, as we take out the enemy carrier, I really don't worry about giving up the A cap anymore. All I need to do here is survive. Even though it's down to a 3v3, we have all the caps here, and we have a destroyer alive. So the best bet for the enemy team winning this game is to take me out and then hopefully be able to take all the caps. But if I'm able to just reverse around this island, I'll still be able to catch these ships broadside as they're pushing in for the B cap. And if they take A, that's really not a huge deal at this point. I am going to take a huge amount of damage though, because I slightly mispositioned and am forced to turn broadside to a full torp strike as well as the Soyuz. Fortunately though, the Musashi's not going to get a hit in on us, since we're just barely able to stay behind the island from him. And this is really why it's important to not over push when you have the advantage. These battleships here are basically melting to our carrier, the destroyer, who managed to take out the Musashi, and myself, of course. The Seattle finally does push into the C cap here, but he's on low health, and we should be able to help our destroyer take him out here. And this really is the essence of battleship play. I haven't used my radar since that initial engagement with the enemy destroyer, and that's pretty much because I haven't needed to. I could have done a lot of the things in this game very similarly in an Iowa. The destroyer engagement would have not been nearly as easy though, and that's why I think the Missouri is such a good pick for ranked. It gives your team such a massive advantage. You're able to trade out or kill off some destroyers early in the game. It prevents the enemy team from gaining map or cap control, and then they're forced to push in the late game and lose their ships for not quite for free, but obviously it's much easier to kill a ship that's pushing into you than if you're pushing into a kiting ship. So let me know in the comments below what battleship you've enjoyed playing in ranked. And unfortunately, the Missouri is really not all that attainable. Much like the Musashi, it's only going to be special events like this where you're going to have to pay an insane amount of money to even have the chance of getting one of these ships. So that's why for most people, if you're just starting into the game or you don't have these ships, it's much easier to win these games with a destroyer, since you're able to impact those early DD engagements much easier. You don't have to have a, well, overpowered premium ship that has a radar gimmick or something like that. But at least there are destroyers in the game that give people the opportunity to have the same or greater battle impact and not have to pay or be playing the game for an extremely long period of time. I still think that destroyers are better overall than a Missouri even. For myself, I've been playing almost exclusively destroyers in ranked. The only times that I haven't really is when people have requested to see a battleship or a cruiser if I'm streaming this on Twitch. But honestly, if we're up to me, I would just be playing destroyers in a lot of these games, since I feel like I'm able to make a lot more calculated plays and decisions that are going to pay off and win games. Not necessarily for dealing the most damage, but in ranked, the goal is to win the game, not deal the most damage. Even though we did a good job of collecting quite a bit of damage this game. I do think it came down to that initial engagement with the destroyer and smartly playing and backing away as the enemy team was forced to push in. As for the build on the Missouri, I'm of course using the standard Battleship build that I've usually been running, except on my Montana, I've been running improved repair party readiness. You can see this is fully trained for Montana. If you're running a Missouri captain, basic survivability is better. The reason I'm running this on the Montana is because Montana gets some pretty insane heals that really don't get used all that much. So taking a few extra hit points from fire, but allowing me to get to those heals a little quicker is generally what I've done. But definitely take basic survivability if you're just running a Missouri or even an Iowa. I think this could be a little bit better. Monty just has so much HP that I think I'm able to tank through that. The most important things though, gun feeder and grease the gears. Once you radar, maybe your guns aren't quite pointed in the right direction of a DD, so having your turrets turn quickly on target can maybe allow you to get 2 salvos in where you'd only otherwise be able to get 1. Having gun feeder also helps. You'll notice I hadn't really swapped to the HE to deal with some destroyers, and that really came down to fears about damage saturation from the HE, where AP is always going to do overpen 10% damage, and potentially hitting some modules. Some of these DDs at these mid tiers have a ton of modules and very small hulls, especially these new Italian ones. So a little worried about that there, but honestly both are good, the HE and the AP against destroyers. And that's why I like to run the improved shell swap upgrade. As far as the other upgrades, it's pretty standard here. I think main battery mod 2 is very nice for ranked, but if I was in a random battle, I'd probably actually want the extra range on the main guns. It's nice to have extra range to shoot across the map and potentially catch a cruiser that isn't aware that you're shooting at 25 kilometers or something like that. If you can afford it on your Missouri, definitely get the surveillance radar upgrade, since 42 seconds is a long time, and that certainly allows at least you to get 2 salvos in and maybe your teammates a few extra. It's pretty powerful. And you'll see even with main armaments mod 1, that Soyuz was just knocking my turrets out the entire time. So depending on the RNG, you can definitely take a lot of pain through your bow as well as these turrets. But yeah, Missouri is my #1 pick for ranked if you're wanting to play a battleship. And it really comes down to battle impact and impacting those initial destroyer trades with the radar. So thank you very much for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.